From a flightless simulator at Ferris Air to a momentous meeting in an alley to the complex mind of an architect to every far sector in space and to the brilliance of the central power battery on Oa. This is the podcast that covers the adventures of all of your favorite ring slingers. This is the Emerald Echo with your hosts, Adam and the Emerald Enthusiast.
Welcome to another episode of Emerald Echo, a Green Lantern podcast and vidcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me, as always, is my co-host, the Emerald Enthusiast himself, Donnie. Donnie, how's it going?
What's up, Lantern fans? It's the man whose ring runs on fanboy energy, the podcasting machine, the big nerd in green. It's the Emerald Enthusiast, and I'm here with a very special episode of the Emerald Echo.
Yes, we are back at another Green Lantern episode. We're getting back in the groove, Donnie. That's
right.
We kind of got scheduling kind of got messed up there, but we're kind of getting back on track, which is good. And it's a special time of year again, as was last year. Which is GL June, which we're
GL June, yes.
We're part of a crossover with other great Green Lantern podcasts and podcasters, and they graciously let us back. So I guess they like what we did last time, and this time they let us go first, which is kind of nice and also pressure filled because we're going to kick the whole thing off.
So if you're listening to this in America, we'll call this the kickoff. If you're listening in Canada, it's the face-off.
Yes, and let's hope it's not Game 7 because that never goes well for at least us.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there. It's all about willpower and hope, which the Leafs had none of in Game 7. Anyway, so we're back for this, and it's fun to always collaborate with these other wonderful people in the Green Lantern podcasting space. But as we always do before any show, and this show is no different in that respect, when there's news regarding the Green Lantern property, be it in comics or other media such as live action, we discuss it and share our thoughts on it. And today we happen to have a live action Green Lantern update in terms of because there's more than one Lantern we're speaking of, their place, their debut, their coming out party in the DCU, James Gunn's DCU. First up in regards to the news, James a couple days ago let it be known that Superman is over 50% finished filming. And why I'm mentioning that on a Green Lantern-centric episode is obviously because Guy Gardner, played by Nathan Fillion, is in Superman. So it's nice to know that they're halfway through. And even better than that, at least from my perspective, Donnie, is that there's been no behind-the-scenes drama reported. Nothing reporting that the executives are concerned with what they're seeing, that there's reshoots because there's problems. Like, it's a nice, calming feeling, and that's something that we haven't had through the course of 2013 through 2021, with the DC live action properties.
It doesn't seem like we're getting a constant flow of conflicting energy.
Yeah.
That's what we got before, is that we would hear one thing, then we would hear the opposite. And so there would be all of these stories out there, some of which were true, some of which weren't. But fans didn't know what to believe, and we had a lot of different cooks in the kitchen, and so people were confused, and that really dampened some of the energy for the fans. Some of the enthusiasm wasn't there because they didn't know what to expect, and obviously we had a lot of infighting behind the scenes, and that just furthered the problems that the DCEU had in connecting with fans, and even some of the movies that we now know aren't connected with that. Now we seem to have a cohesive vision, and when we do get updates, they seem to be reliable.
Well, yeah, usually they're directly from James Gunn, which we'll get to in a second. Which helps because he's the guy. I mean, if anybody would know, it would be him. You'd think, right? I mean, he is the co-CEO of the whole shebang.
And I want to mention when we get to news, before we close, I want to mention one more thing that has nothing to do with James Gunn or the live action properties, but it's something that's important that I want to mention.
Okay, cool. So, interesting thing that they're 50% done. Also, with that is that they're filming on location, seemingly outdoors. Now, normally a lot of people get excited because hey, leaks, photo leaks, and all the photographers are going to be lurking and getting shots. That might not be the case because James Gunn has built a tarp, or as I like to comedically say, a wall, and he's blocked off the filming location. So I don't think we're going to be seeing much leaks from this particular outdoor filming.
Okay.
And I'm kind of two minds in regards to that. On the one hand, would I like to see a behind-the-scenes shot of, let's say, for the sake of this show, Guy Gardner, in costume?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Would I also, at the same time, like to remain unspoiled over a year in advance of the film? Yes. So, while I like to see stuff for the sake of, hey, we have something to talk about on the show and the news portion, yeah, but am I happy that I'm not going to be spoiled over a year in advance of the film? Yeah, so it is what it is. As long as filming goes smoothly, listen, James Gunn can always, when he feels we're ready, release an official picture of Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, like he did with David Cornsweet as Superman. So
Right.
and
obviously that one single picture has gotten a lot of people talking.
Yes.
And again, whereas I said before, a lot of, negative buzz and confusion, now we have positive buzz and fans interacting in a way that I think just, increases the hype, as opposed to people saying, what is happening here?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So we're halfway there in terms of Superman. So that would be, I would assume, the Green Lantern, in terms of the mythology of the Green Lantern for the DCU. That would be the debut with Guy Gardner and Nathan Fillion. But as we know from the Slate announcement back at the beginning of last year, or was it the end of, I can't remember, it was either the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024 when James Gunn, I think it was the end, the very end of 2023, when James Gunn announced the Slate.
We'll say winter time.
Yeah. And what was that crossover? Winter's coming, winter's end, endless winter. What was that? I don't know what the hell it was.
It was endless winter.
It took me 2 years to finally get it right, but I got yeah. But yeah, so winter of, I guess, 2023, James Gunn gave us Chapter 1 of the DC Universe, or part of Chapter 1. And part of that was Lanterns, which is an HBO Max live-action series, focusing predominantly on Hal Jordan and John Stewart, but there will be other Lanterns present as well, which James Gunn didn't name who those Lanterns were. Since that time, we've gotten a lot of rumors of...
Well, I do believe that it's been confirmed that Sinestro will show up at some point.
Probably. That would be a good bet. I can't remember if James Gunn specifically, but... It's Sinestro, for God's sake.
Yeah, what I've heard is that at first we're going to see a couple of Earthbound villains and then eventually Sinestro. So
right, which makes sense. Yeah, because Sinestro is the main, is the big bad of for Green Lanterns, really. So he would need to be there.
In the words of Sinestro, Jordan, I am better than you, and you already knew that.
Yeah, well, he's MJF apparently with the mustache. So over the course of that, since that announcement, we've gotten a lot of rumors of who was involved, creatively speaking, on the Lanterns show. We had even speculated on the show based on a picture tweeted out by Tom King. He tweeted out an image of a mug with Hal Jordan on it, and that was enough to have us sleuthing that, hey, Tom King is probably involved in this Lanterns show because he's part of James Gunn's DC Studios writers' room. And so today, finally, we have official confirmation from James Gunn himself, which is always the best source, that of who are the creative figureheads, the spearheads, the guardians, if you will.
The guardians of the universe, so to speak.
Yes.
The guardians of this universe.
Yes, for Green Lantern.
Yes.
So I'm going to read off his tweet, or his thread.
Thread.
That's his.
Post.
I don't know how to. He posted on social media, and I'm going to read the blurb. How about that? Yeah. So he says, yes, it's true. The Lanterns DCU series is putting together a crack team of writers based on a wonderful pilot script and Bible by Chris Mundy. Now, he says Chris Mundy, Tom King, and David Lindelof. Now, Chris Mundy was the showrunner for, I believe, Criminal Minds, and also Ozark. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's getting a lot of buzz from people that I've talked to. Tom King,
and he also worked on True Detective.
Right, yeah.
Wasn't that kind of name dropped before as an inspiration for this show?
Right, yeah. So that's Chris Mundy. Tom King, we know, is a prolific comic book writer. He's currently writing the Wonder Woman title for DC. Mm-hmm. He wrote for years on the Batman title, to my mixed response. He wrote Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which was fantastic, which is being adapted as a film as well in the DCU. So, he's the comic book guy that's there present. And then Damon Lindelof, of course, was the showrunner of Lost, which had really good seasons up until the very end. And then he also worked on the live-action series Watchmen for the DC universe. So again, like they are the producers, showrunners. They wrote the pilot script, and now the writers' room will work off the series Bible that they also wrote. Those are the confirmed names. Now, there's also a report from, and this is why the day before today, which James Gunn confirmed this.
Yeah. Well, just to interject, I'm a big fan of Lindelof because I really loved Lost. Mm-hmm. And so that just to know that name is now connected with this project, it just further increases my enthusiasm and anticipation for this.
Yes, I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoyed Lost right up until the ending, the very end, the explanation of the ending. I was like, nah, I don't know if I like that, but everything else was fine. It was great. And I got to do it, Donnie. I know we're on a crossover, and I got to behave myself, but I got to do it. You mentioned Lost. Lost introduced me and probably the world to Evangeline Lilly. And wouldn't you know, Evangeline Lilly, who's Canadian, is also on the list. Now, prerequisite, that's out of the way. I've done
when we get into the comic later, I've got to highlight one panel because it really made me think of you. But we'll get to that. So make sure you watch the whole show.
I'm excited for that.
Or listen to the show.
Yeah, the reason why I think James Gunn is coming out and confirming this is because there was an article that came out from a site called Nexus Point News that revealed these producers that we just mentioned, and apparently a writer's room. The other people they haven't been confirmed by James. These other people haven't been confirmed by James Gunn, but considering that he's confirming these other names, there's a high chance that these other people are involved. Okay. So one of them is Justin Britt Gibson, who is known for writing Counterpart and Into the Badlands. There's also Brianna Gibson and Vanessa Baden Kelly, and you usually do the names, so if I'm screwing them up, I'm blaming you anyway. So Brianna Gibson is notable because she's one of the story writers on the Penguin series that's coming.
Can't wait for that.
Which is going to be fantastic. I can't even talk. Fantastic.
The Fantastics.
Yeah. Not to be confused with the Fantastic Four. And then Vanessa.
That's the Wayback Wrestling Mania podcast, available right here on YouTube.
There you go. Yeah. And then in terms of Vanessa Baden Kelly, she is an executive, or she was an executive story editor on HBO Max's. Okay, now this show has an interesting title: "The Sex Lives of the College Girls." All right, I'm going to leave that there. So, I mean, again, James Gunn didn't confirm these other names, but given that he's confirming the principal producers and showrunners, I'd say it's a good bet that these names are probably also part of the production. So I know you gave your take on Lindelof because you love Lost. I too loved, like I said, 99% of Lost, and I loved the Watchmen series that Lindelof produced recently. What was it, a couple of years ago? I thought it was fantastic. And then with Chris Mundy, I've never seen Ozark, but I have seen a couple of the True Detective series. So, I mean, these are quality people that you're adding to the production, and I mean, I'll never get upset when the people being added have quality product on their resume. That's never a bad thing. I think Lindelof is a good person to have because if you look at Lost and you look at Watchmen, they are grand scale kind of epic storytelling, and that's what you're going to need some of that with Green Lantern. So I'm glad that he has that. Tom King being there obviously is important because he's essentially the DC Comics representative in the room, which is also good. And this has me so excited for what Lanterns is going to bring us. And what has me really interested, again, seems like every time this series is brought up, James Gunn accompanies whatever news he's dropping with an image of the Earth One graphic novel. So I wonder if that is going to have some bearing or some import on this series because the imagery keeps being used.
It would make sense because that is not so grounded in the traditional like Silver Age or Bronze Age mythology. So it would be easier to follow for people who aren't familiar with the Green Lantern mythos. Yet at the same time, it's faithful enough to, I think, please Green Lantern fans, veteran Green Lantern fans like myself, who don't just want to see names slapped on Hal Jordan and John Stewart. We definitely want to see the characters that we love from the comics, but they don't have to be chained to every little piece of continuity.
Yeah. Especially, I think aesthetic. My thinking is maybe aesthetically they'll take from Earth One, but also if you look at the Earth One Volume 1 and 2, I think we did both. We reviewed both on the show, right? If not one, part 1 for sure. I don't know. I can't remember about part 2 or not, but we did.
You know what? Sure. It's been a while. I do remember us doing part 1, and I know we at least had the intention to do part 2.
Okay, so if we haven't done part 2, we'll do it.
Go back and listen to all of the Emerald Echoes and let us know.
Well, I could easily do a search, but I will do a search at some point and figure out.
I meant that to the people who are listening. Go back and listen to all of them.
yeah, definitely listen to all of them, and then if we have done Earth 1 Part 2, enjoy it. If not, we will get to it. I promise.
Whatever we haven't gotten to yet, we will eventually.
Yeah. We plan to be here until we're old and gray, or let me rephrase. Old and gray, older and grayer. How about
Exactly.
that? All right, we're good. But yeah, so we'll get to it. But yeah, so aesthetically, I can definitely see it. But even if they use some story points, that had enough grand scale, in space stuff that I think you're right. It would satisfy both the hardcore fans and the newbies. But we'll wait and see because. For example, Superman is using All-Star Superman. It's using Superman for All Seasons. There's a lot of different source material being pulled from for Superman. So I expect Green Lantern will pluck, or sorry, Lanterns will pluck, probably obviously from Earth One, but from other sources as well. I think it'll be
use whatever works well for the show.
It'll be a nice pot of potluck of Green Lantern story beats from the comics woven into the show is the hope, and I think is very likely. That's the news we have. Seems like we're both excited about it, and the fact that James Gunn is actually posting about it means movement is happening on the Lanterns show, and that is a good thing. Now, you said there was something you wanted to mention before we.
Yes, before I'm assuming we're going to take a break here, or we segue to the comics.
Yeah, we're going to segue to the comics, but you said you wanted to.
That's fine. I just want to say, listen to me well. Tim Sheridan did not rage quit DC Comics. And I say this because I saw a number of videos this week put out on YouTube, people claiming this from quote unquote inside sources. Well, my source to tell you that is incorrect is Tim Sheridan, because I spoke to him. I don't know where people get this, but I know why they do it.
He likes us. Well, he likes Donnie. I don't know if he likes me confirmed, but he likes Donnie.
Yeah.
And he talks to Donnie, so we'll leave it at that. I don't want to bother him. But yeah, come on, man, folks. Can we stop believing nonsense on the internet of all places where nonsense lives and festers?
And if you don't believe me, you know what? Go to his various social media places and see just how happy he is with the results of this series. Because it's not hard to find.
I don't know why you think otherwise. All you have to do is listen to our episode, and that'll tell you. Not that I'm pushing our own material, but I kind of am. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Because we do a lot of work to put these episodes together and bring you, what we hope is quality content. But yeah, watch our episode, listen to our episode. Of course, he's happy with the results of the series. You could see all the passion that he put into it, and his team too. Not just him, the artists and
he has a lot of irons in the fire. We know he's written projects for Netflix, and he has a number of different things. So if you see him doing something different, that does not mean that these rumors about him supposedly raging at DC are true.
Besides, if there's another gig in his DC future, which there should be.
I'm sure there will be.
He'll announce it when it's ready. I think what we need to take away from both the news that we're talking about before with the Lantern stuff and the Tim Sheridan thing, when we are meant to hear something officially, we'll hear it. We've got to get away from this "I want news now" mentality. Listen, we've all been there. You don't think I want to see what the rest of the cast members of Superman look like in their costumes? Of course I do. But it's not meant for me to see yet. When it is, I'll see it. And we'll comment on it on our various shows. But I'm not going to sit here demanding that a writer constantly talk about the one project he has going amongst many. Or that James Gunn every day tell me step by step what project is at what phase of development. I don't need to know these things until they're ready to tell me. Simple. Right. This privilege, is that the right phrase? Is this privilege mentality that we have that we're owed something?
Yeah, entitled.
Thank you. That's what I was entitled.
There you go.
We've got to stop this. You know what the creators, both the writers and of comics and creators of TV shows and movies, you know what they owe us? I think they feel that they owe us the best possible story they can tell, and that's all they really owe. They owe themselves, and then by virtue of us being the consumers, we'll get the benefit of that too. But they don't owe us to tell us things ahead of time. There's a reason why news has a specific, cycle. Comic news, usually it's when solicitations come out. When a new project is announced, that's usually when it's announced.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. If you're bored, go read some comics. They literally come out every week.
Yeah, so there's content, folks. Or if there's something that you like that's already been filmed or made, You probably have the physical copy, or it's on streaming somewhere. Go watch it. Get off of YouTube and Twitter and say, I'm old, I want to know this now. No, you'll get it when you get it. And just, like, relax, patience. Good things come to those that wait. Evidenced by this Lanterns news today. We've got 2 great creators, or 3 great creators, shepherding the live-action adventures of the Green Lanterns.
Yes.
Took a while to get official confirmation, but wasn't it worth it? I would say so. So let's just wait. And if you're liking the Alan Scott story, great. If you haven't read it yet, and you've heard people talk about it and want to give it a chance, I urge you to go do that. Either digital platform or your local comic shop, whichever you prefer. But, and look, if you're refusing to read it because of reasons that shouldn't be acceptable in 2024, well, go fly a kite. But, those are the 3 options we have.
Yeah.
And I think that's it for the news portion.
Yeah, you did that so very nicely, sir.
I mean, there are other ways I could have done it, but we're on a crossover. So I'm trying to be polite on the crossover, Donnie.
Yeah, exactly.
If this wasn't a crossover episode, you probably would have got a different verbiage that you would have had to bleep out, and it would have been more work for you. But today I'm in a good mood, so I'll be nice about it.
You might have been in a more Degeneration X mood. Yeah, I got 2 words for you.
Exactly. But they wouldn't have been those 2 words. They would have been 2 other words. Even more profane. But again, we're on a crossover. I'm trying to be polite. And the Leafs got a new coach that I like, so I'm in a good mood.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
That's why you're getting the sanitized version.
All right.
But with that, we're going to take a break. And on the other side, we're actually going to get to the comic that is part of this crossover that you're listening to the first part of. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back.
We indeed are, and we are more than happy to kick off the GL June crossover for this year. So, Donnie, break it all down for us. What are we talking about today?
The Siege of Zi Charam, part 1 of 5, and that is in the New Titans number 124, which was a crossover that included Green Lantern Kyle Rayner in 1995.
Indeed, it was, and it's the way you said that. I don't know if there's an official way to pronounce it. But
the thing is, I've watched a bunch of videos and listened to people pronounce it, and everybody does it differently.
Yeah, it reminds me. It's the same thing with there's Ra's al Ghul and Ra's al Ghul, and it's like, well, all right, which is it? So it's very much that situation. I'd never read this crossover before this, so this was a new experience for me, which I always like. So I'm appreciative of that, and so this was a cool experience for me. But go ahead, let's break down what's going on in this book, Donnie. Where are we?
Okay, well, let me fill people in a little bit here on exactly who we are talking about. When we say Titans, they've had quite a few different itinerations over the years, so let's talk about who is here. When we say the New Titans, we're talking about Arsenal, Damage, Darkstar, a.k.a. Donna Troy, Green Lantern, of course, Kyle Rayner, Impulse, Minion, Mirage, Rose Wilson, Terra, and Supergirl, but not the Supergirl you probably know. There's been a number of Supergirl characters within DC Universe. This was actually the character before this. She was known as Matrix, and she's actually a shape-shifting alien that was created in the Pocket Universe by that universe's version of Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually the Supergirl that you saw in the Death of Superman, the one that got punched by Doomsday and her face like turned to silly putty.
Yeah,
Again, that's because yeah, she's a shape-shifting alien, and we actually see her change in front of Kyle Rayner in one of the, I believe it's Green Lantern 65. And when I say change, I should clarify. She shapeshifts. She doesn't just change. I realized how bad that sounded, but anyway.
Yeah, because changing in front of Kyle, I mean, he may have enjoyed it, but it wouldn't be. Yeah, it wouldn't be appropriate.
He probably would have fainted, but anyway, no, she shapeshifts. She can change into different forms, obviously, and you see her true form in, I believe it's Green Lantern 65. It's one of these issues in this crossover.
Yes.
So that's who we're talking about here, and there are also a number of characters here. Don't want to talk about the bad guys too much, but also Sergeant Steele plays a pivotal role early on in this.
I thought you were going to say Sergeant Slaughter for a minute. That's part of my wrestling brain.
You maggot. Anyway, so as far as the creative team, we'll put the whole team in here, but this is written by Marv Wolfman, Michael Jan Friedman, story by William Rosado. No, he does the pencils. Keith Champagne and Jason Martin. Joshua Myers on colors. Albert de Guzman on letters. And edits by Pat Garahi, I guess. So there you go.
You know what, this whole story, a lot of it to me feels like, it's going to sound weird to say, maybe not. It feels like a Star Trek episode, which is not a bad thing because I love Star Trek. But a lot of the build-up feels like a Star Trek episode.
Well, you and I have talked about in the past that we see a lot of elements of both Star Wars and Star Trek in Green Lantern. So if you like those things, Green Lantern is the kind of story within the comics that should be attractive to you organically.
Yeah. No, it's because a lot of it, like they're making their plan of attack, right? You know, and then they're actually in space, so it's like it has that Star Trek feel.
Mm-hmm. And this opens up with a satellite being destroyed by the Venom symbiote. Just kidding. It does look like the Venom symbiote, but it's a spontaneous generation of a gravity well. And that's what we're dealing with here is this gravity well kind of, all the characters in this book converge on that, and we see exactly how that influences this crossover story.
Right. It was interesting to see, and I kind of forgot where we are for a bit before, then I started reading. But seeing Donna Troy in the Dark Star portion of her career it was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right.
But that was interesting. The other thing that was interesting to me, it was kind of funny, but also reminded me how annoying back in the day he was Bart. Good Lord.
If you're the kind of person that sees kids on their phones all the time and are like, oh, the kids never get off their phones.
And you want to throw the phone out the window? Yeah.
Yeah, Bart was doing that here before we had smartphones because he had a handheld video game, and that's what he was playing throughout this whole thing. So
much so that he's like so focused on that game that he misses the flight off into the
gravitational well.
Yeah,
yes.
To the mission.
And, the big fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So because he had to go get the video game, and it's like. So yeah, as much as this is a story that's 24 years old, somewhere around there.
29. It was 1995.
Sorry. Yeah,
yes.
29.
Yes.
There goes my math is crap. But yeah, as much as this is 29 years old, that theme is still very relevant.
Yeah.
with the children of today, the kids of today, the youth, which I am no longer part of. But yeah, I thought, man, is he annoying in this?
Yeah. And I like how, the Titans are like, pay attention. He's like, shh, I'm surrounded by aliens, got to blast them all,
Yeah.
So yeah, so good job with the dialogue there. That's very indicative of a youngster who's drawn into a video game. So
Right. Yeah, and because think about it, like presumably they're going to go out into space and in this gravity well, probably encounter some aliens in quote unquote real life. Um, um, and here he is worried about playing video games. So and encountering fictional, or again, for the purpose of this story, fictional aliens.
yes.
I found that very, it made me chuckle. That kind of aspect of it. But yeah, so the Bart part was very, very on point with today's society, even though the story is nearly 30 years old.
And I think it was very amusing, his characterization in this issue.
Yes.
But we see that the Titans, including, a number of them, including Terra, they ask why they're being charged with this mission. And Sergeant Steele says, "You remember the government's been forking out cash for you people for several months. We want something in return. You're all going to go." And he's very brusque here, which, and Arsenal is like, why not just send, Donna and Kyle, because they seem like they could handle this. Although in the end, obviously, it was bigger than any of these characters could have dealt with in a smaller group. This was a huge threat, and we only see the very beginning of this by the end of the story.
Right. You know what's interesting about that, though? The whole sort of government mandating that they go and look into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It very much reminded me, and pardon me for going to the other side of the aisle for a second, but it reminded me of Captain America, the
Civil War
aspect of it. It was very
the Superhero Registration Act.
Yeah, which was something that Marvel did in the books first,
right
before the movie. But it was nice to see it here.
Well, the Accords was based on the Superhero Registration Act.
Right. Yeah, but seeing DC do a sort of kind of similar thing with the Titans being mandated by the government on what missions they should go on and this and that. It's nice to see DC, doing that first. With the story, so it was cool, but it did remind me of that.
We've definitely seen, various governments be associated with heroes over the years with varying degrees of success. Sometimes it's a disaster, and sometimes it's a pretty good relationship, depending on the era and the hero and the government. So
yeah.
Also want to point out another thing here. If you're not familiar with Jarrus Minion, okay, the little elf-looking character here, the little bluish elf-looking character, he's the one who changes into what always struck me as kind of like a combination of the Hulk and the Silver Surfer and Guy Gardner Warrior. This this big character too. He has two different forms. If you're unfamiliar with him, go back and read issue number 123. It gives you a good snapshot into that character.
Yeah.
So, but here he is the one who's wearing the hoodie that says "I love New York."
But that's a good hodgepodge that you kind of mentioned, like what he looks like. That's a good,
I love that character's visuals because he's very 90s, which I mean that's my wheelhouse because he's huge and he can have these various weapons come out of his body, and at the same time he has that kind of chrome look of the Silver Surfer. So I think he's a cool character.
Yeah, you were in your element in the 90s with comics, right? Did you go nuts for all the variant covers? I mean, you do now, but back then, did you go nuts for the variant covers?
I don't remember there being a proliferation of variant covers back then.
Weren't foil variants a big thing back then?
There would be, but it was less about. There were a lot of foil and special edition covers, but not necessarily variants all of the time.
Okay.
Although there were a lot of, I do remember like printing errors and stuff becoming very valuable after the fact.
Okay.
back in the 90s, I mean, that was kind of my kickoff to, being in the adult world with adult money. So I remember loving going to shops and going through the long boxes that were like, two for $1 or four for $1, and just leaving with, armloads of comics from the store. Oh, good memories, man.
Yeah.
So we also see that the various characters here, they start to theorize who is behind this event, and
Right.
they name Simon and Dr. Polaris, both of whom are characters that we've seen at this point.
Yeah, we had talked about them in some of our past Kyle retro kind of discussions.
Yeah. So, and we see here that, again, this is a really serious situation, and even John Stewart, even though he's not in this issue, he kind of chimes in and is like, yeah, you need to go investigate this.
Yes. And so as they're getting ready to do that, what really sort of kind of was the to me the sort of driving, the quality of the book, the thing that kept me interested the most was the interpersonal relationship between some of the characters. Like seeing Tara kind of struggle with her place of being there. Like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm lost.
She's kind of annoyed with the situation. She doesn't understand why she's being pulled into this, although she plays a key role later on.
Yeah, right. But then also, like, Kyle, and Donna, sort of, the relationship, sort of multiple characters talking about their relationship and what exactly is going on there.
This is a more action-focused book, but you do get some, from the limited dialogue that we see between like Kyle and Donna, and as well as Kyle and Supergirl, because he talks about his relationship with Donna, with Supergirl. You see some good development here regarding that relationship as to where it is.
And you know what's funny about that is too, like when Kyle goes with Supergirl, right? And he whispers to Donna, goes, or something to the effect of, "Does this make you jealous?" And she's like, "Not a chance. You wish," or something like that. I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, why are you pushing your luck?
Yeah, and I like Tara's reaction to that too. She's like, "Blech," she's like love talk.
It's like, like, if I was talking to Kyle, I'd be like, that's Donna Troy, right? She has comparable abilities to Wonder Woman. You know that if you piss her off enough, she could cause some damage to you. You might want to walk back your sarcasm.
You remember what she did to Kyle early on when they were training right after Kyle got the ring. She is in incredible shape and a very formidable fighter. So
right, and then but then, like, you're right about the conversation that Kyle and Supergirl were having. Almost talking about like having some sort of like a common bond, the two of them, right?
Yeah,
which is also I just like the interpersonal conversations, and the reference to the continuity that was going on for from Kyle's book and other characters. Like, I liked those references a lot. It made it feel, it just, what it makes the universe, feel like the DC universe, like a living, breathing entity where outside of your own little world things happen, and now they're kind of converging and they're discussing each other's lives. Like, I just like that stuff in the midst of the big spacefaring shenanigans.
And I will say this is not the most quintessential Green Lantern book. You're not going to read this and get the most Green Lantern flavor, but I do like this idea of Kyle having friends, and this type of story really, kind of gives you an overall flavor of some of the things that go on in the DC universe. And I really like the Titans when they decide that they're going to get in the puddle jumper and go to Jupiter, which is where the gravitational well is. Their excitement that you can see drawn here. I really like those panels.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw, okay, they're going to go as a group, somewhat reluctantly on the parts of some of the characters? But what was your reaction to that part?
To the fact that some of them were reluctant?
Yes.
I mean, it makes sense. Unless you're... Donna even talked about it when she was sort of telling Donna not to touch the weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
But
that part was great. That part was great too.
Yeah. No, but like, this idea of... Unless you've had experience with being in space, having adventures set in space, characters that can fly and breathe out in space on their own, that would be daunting and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that element of reality. Some characters were very enthusiastic and eager, and other characters were like, no, And I like it. I like it when all the characters aren't necessarily on the same page. I think that adds a layer of realism.
Yeah, it can't, and I agree. It can't just be everybody's like, yeah, let's go to space, because I don't know how many people, like, in reality, like, it's one thing. Forget about forget about the fact that they're going there, potentially encountering dangerous entities.
Mm-hmm.
Even just saying, like, in modern day, they have those shuttles that if you have Bruce Wayne level money, you can go up and fly up and see the Earth from orbit or whatever. Even just that is.
You have your own satellite.
Yeah, if somebody says no, but if somebody says you want to go, if on Jeff Bezos' rocket to take you up, part of me would be like, yeah, that's cool, but then part of me would be like, okay, but now the cool factor potentially wears off. You know how much crap could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
So the idea that there's trepidation makes sense.
Yeah. I also like the interplay here between Arsenal and Impulse. When when Impulse is told, yeah, we're going to Jupiter, his exuberance here, I like the way it's written. It's very whimsical, but at the same time, can you imagine being around somebody like Impulse who just chatters all the time because he's told this is what we're doing, and he's like, I'm going to Jupiter, I'm going to Jupiter, I'm going to Jupiter.
Oh, God.
And it's this huge word balloon that goes all the way down the panel, and I'm like, that would drive me nuts to be around somebody who talks like that all the time.
I can't imagine. I can't remember if we talked about this on air last week about back in the day when I was a kid and I got a bit unruly.
Mm-hmm.
I got the slipper launched at me as if it was a batarang. And I can't remember if that was on air or not. It probably was. But that's what I would want to do to somebody like Bart. If he kept talking, I'll just like launch a slipper at him and just be like, "Can you shut up for 5 minutes and let me think?" That was my reaction every time Bart was on the page. It was like, "Man, okay, you're excited. Shut up. Like, calm yourself now." So yeah, it's I can only imagine what that's.
The bad thing is, if you throw it, he could so easily avoid it. You never actually hit him.
Yeah, but if it's Bart, yes, but if one of my nephews is getting unruly, they're not as fast as the Flash, and so watch yourselves. Is my thing.
Okay, so back on the mission here, as the characters are going toward Jupiter, we see what you and I alluded to earlier is this conversation between Kyle and Supergirl. And Supergirl, I really like this exchange. She says, "You and Donna gotten as close as it looks to the rest of us?" And he says yes and no. She's recently divorced and she's still a little tender when it comes to relationships. And I don't want to take advantage of her vulnerability. that really shows another step in Kyle's evolution and maturity here of understanding, where he is in his life, not just with the Green Lantern ring, but we talked about, Kyle being very immature when he first got the ring. Now we see him a little bit later, and he's starting to develop this very, again, adult, mature relationship with Donna. And I really like that he had to say that he is someone who is cognizant of her feelings and he doesn't want to hurt her.
I did really like that for the simple fact that it's, a small thing in the grand scheme of the issue, but it really shows his growth as a character from when we started our reread to now. It really shows the growth of his character, and I like that. Also, Supergirl was like, "Oh, it's who says chivalry's dead or whatever."
Right.
And he was quick to point out, "Wait, no, I'm not a saint." Which it's funny. As I was about to read that sentence, I'm like, "Well, I mean, let's hold off on the."
Yeah, he says I'm not a Boy Scout, but he's trying, basically. Yeah.
Let's hold off on the effusive praise, because if Kyle could make and he could. And make a construct of a pen, I'm sure he would have been. There would be many clicks on that pen, my friend.
On that note, so as they're flying the puddle jumper here, one of the panels that caught my eye here, Donna Troy is drawn very beautifully here. She's bent over the chair of Arsenal here, and as they're flying the puddle jumper here, and she's very tall, very in shape. And I thought about Adam when I saw this, and I'm like, she's probably on the Multiverse Wives list.
Oh, absolutely! If there was a comic book version of me that existed in the DC universe, Donna Troy would be, in fact, on the list. Now, I'll extend that to the quasi real world, and I say quasi because, much to my chagrin, I do not have literal multiverse wives. But the Connor Leslie, who played Donna Troy in the Titan series, is in fact on the list. So, in a roundabout way, Donna Troy is still on the actual list. So you weren't far off in thinking of it in that moment.
Well, there you go. Like I said, at least we're on the same wavelength.
It's just like me every time Todd McFarlane posts about an action figure. I'm like, ooh, I think of Donnie whenever I see it.
You are not kidding. Really excited about the Marvel news, but we'll have to save that for another podcast.
Another episode, yeah.
That's its own gravitational well. If I start talking about
action figures, and then there's me waiting for that replica '89 Keaton cowl. Like they're saying, just if I could give Todd McFarlane my wallet right now for that, I would. And I'd happily say goodbye to it. Just for the record.
Yeah. So on that same note, we talked about some of the character development here. I like when Roy and Donna are talking, and he starts to feel around about where her relationship is with Kyle. You can see that she really adores Kyle, but at the same time, she's been hurt before. And I like the panel where you can see her kind of welling up a little bit because she's been so hurt, and she's worried about maybe that affecting their relationship down the road. So, yeah. But then, she kind of pulls herself back. She's like, look, we have a job to do. And so she's got to be focused on the task at hand. She's drawn very well in this book.
And again, I think the cool thing is it shows that in the midst of these scenarios, these world-altering scenarios, these people have lives, concerns, other priorities. And it makes the proceedings all the more legitimate just by those little references and touches, right? So.
And I like that there's a good mix of tones here because, this ends with obviously a very big climactic cosmic battle. But on their way there, again, I like a lot of the interplays here. You talked earlier about Tara trying on some of the equipment and her getting into this like little kind of quasi scuffle here with Damage, and it's really funny.
Yeah.
And of course, Donna has to separate them. And I like how Tara, how she's drawn in that one panel. She's got both of her fists up. She's like, "Why, yada." Yeah, so that's really cool.
It was.
So eventually, we do come to the gravitational well, and it instantly grabs Minion with its tendrils.
That is.
And go ahead, sir.
The visuals are very it's almost like a horror kind of.
Yes. And that's why I say it actually looks a lot like the way it's drawn is like the Venom symbiote.
Yes.
Yeah, even though it's obviously much larger, and it also seems to be having an effect on Kyle's ring.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he actually says it's playing havoc with my ring,
which is interesting. For it to be, causing issue with the ring.
And I also I really appreciate Donna's little, I shouldn't say little, but Donna's strategy here. When Jarrus is getting pulled in, Kyle's trying to pull him out, and she's like, "Look, everybody link hands," and she tries to have everyone form a chain and pull themselves out. And I really I like that idea of her having that kind of quick thinking as a leader.
That reminds me of that thing with the monkeys, right? The game, those isn't there like toys with the monkeys?
Yeah. I think it's called Barrel of Monkeys.
Yeah.
Where they all link up. Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of. I'm like, all right, yeah, that was unique. And again, just by virtue of them having to struggle to overcome a situation,
right,
adds so much to the equation, because if they don't struggle, what's the fun in reading the adventure, right?
Well, you put it perfectly too. Look at all the things that can go wrong in space, and that's a nice segue here. We see that there are a bunch of asteroids being pulled in as well, and Kyle has to create this giant blaster to try to blast away some of these asteroids because they're getting hit with the asteroids from behind.
Right.
So they've got two different threats here, and that was some really nice art too. Kyle didn't make a ton of constructs in this, but I like that one in particular.
Yeah, especially all the stuff in space looked phenomenal. Like, some of the point of view shots when you see the asteroids, just there, and it really felt the art once they got to space was very immersive.
Yes,
and I enjoyed it. And as you pointed out, Donna Troy looked wonderful in this issue.
Well, and much like, we get a hint at what this thing is made of, because not only is it causing some disruption with Kyle's ring, it does the same thing to Tara when she tries to use the asteroids to close the anomaly. She's like, it's causing some sort of gravity feedback, and it causes her a lot of pain when she's trying to use her powers.
And this is, one of the reasons why somebody like Tara is there, for giving her skill set, her power set, and so you see it on display why she's there, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, and so like I said, things start building to a crescendo here, and they're actually pulled through. And it says it still remains to be seen whether they will succeed in Zi Charam.
Yeah.
And we see that there are some characters that are watching this scenario and watching them be pulled through into this anomaly and to be pulled through onto the other side.
Right. And we, as yet, are not made aware of who these people are.
Right. And so as they're pulled through, we see Kyle, trying to light everyone's way and using his ring to kind of pull everyone together and, to keep them all together as a group.
Well, that was really, I think that was a strong moment for Kyle. To use the ring like that. And sort of helping everybody through. Almost like as if he's a calming influence in the midst of all the chaos, which is interesting given the learning curve that Kyle had to go through. To think that he could be in a position where he's the calming influence that gets everybody to safety is interesting.
And I like that we see him with different dynamics. Like, later on when he goes back in time and he sees a younger version of Hal Jordan, he's awestruck, and he's kind of learning from Hal. And, he's learning from Alan at various points in Volume 3, and he's learning from John Stewart. But I like that in this scenario, even though Donna's obviously the leader out here in space, he has that, kind of take charge attitude at certain instances in this issue.
Right.
So now they end up underneath this gigantic spaceship. By the way, it's very masterfully drawn. I liked all the line work here. That looks really cool. See, that's why I really like space stories so much, is you get some of these really incredible visuals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and of course they say, well, we hope it's friendly, and immediately we see that it's not, because it fires them. So that took all of 2 panels.
Spoiler alert, it's never going to be, 99% of the time it's not going to be friendly.
So Supergirl, she breaches the ship. She flies right into it. Even though this version isn't as strong as like the Kara Zor-El, she's still very powerful, obviously, and she makes it inside easily. So go ahead, sir.
That was a cool moment, because I think it's important to see. I love that this book strikes a balance of showing the heroes struggling and encountering problems, but then also keeping them very formidable, very strong, very powerful. It strikes that unique balance that you need to have, right? And that scene was one of them. Kyle being, sort of the light guiding the way for the team to safety. Those moments keep the characters strong.
And you can also see this in kind of a meta way as far as the time period is concerned, because his book was selling very well. He was a very popular character for many years. And there were other books here that weren't selling well, like Damage, and they were trying to use Kyle to pop into these other titles and help their popularity a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, you can kind of see it that way, as he actually is trying to pull these characters together and kind of give them some life.
Yeah.
So inside the ship, we see a couple of aliens, and they're obviously attacking the Titans here. Minion fights back, and again, I like the visuals here. I talked about earlier. He kind of uses his hand, kind of turns into goop, and he gets his hand, or this basically his body, on one of these aliens, and then the other one instantly opens a black hole like inside of the ship, and they're all pulled back out, including one of the other aliens.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go too far here, because I don't want to step on, what they're going to deal with the with the upcoming. These are the progenitors, although in some places I see them referenced as the protogenitors, but I don't know why exactly I see that variance, but I'll just say the progenitors here. That's who we're dealing with here, and we actually see that the progenitor that is sucked out instantly dies in space because he doesn't have any protection.
Right. And it's what I liked about it was the heroes kind of taking responsibility for that happening, even though extenuating circumstances and all that. I think it was Tara that kind of sort of took it. Right.
And I've got to say here, the final panel is what comic book artwork is intended to do. The body sets here, you see it's Donna and Minion and Supergirl and Kyle behind them. The way they're all drawn together really, draws your interest in. And then down at the bottom here, it says the action continues in Green Lantern 65. Dark Stars 34, Damage 16, then back with us for the cosmic conclusion in 30 days. But Donna is drawn so well here, as well as, like I said, I like Minion's look, Supergirl and Kyle. just their, the dynamic nature of this panel really draws you in, and it makes you want to continue reading this crossover. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to, that's a good example of a final image to end something on, to sort of hook a reader to come back. That was very very well drawn, exceptional. Yeah, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know I wanted to continue reading after I read that, so it worked.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a sucker for stories with weird aliens and weird, cosmic, ships and weird out there concepts. Give me that kind of stuff. Obviously, as a fan of Green Lantern and Superman, Venom, all these characters that kind of have ties to space.
Yeah.
I'm always down for at least one read with characters like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want it to be the only thing that a character's known for, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, the throwdown that Sinestro and Hal had recently that we covered on Earth is really cool.
On Earth, yeah.
Yeah, so that was really cool, but it's also nice to have it be in space with an even more non-humanoid looking alien creature. Like, because Sinestro, yes, he's an alien, right? But he's very humanoid looking, right?
Yeah.
So then you have other characters that the Green Lantern has to deal with that aren't human looking at all. And that's just as exciting as the battle with Sinestro. But one of the cool things about the Green Lantern property is that it affords you the option of both types of stories.
Yeah, it's one of the most versatile mythos out there, because again, you can tell your ground level stories and your cosmic level stories and your god level stories. We've seen that too with with Parallax and Ion and with John Stewart when he was ascended from the source. Yeah. So we see a number of those types of stories, and we see the versatility of the Green Lantern mythos.
Right, absolutely. So, but yeah, this is a solid start to the crossover. And again, he did his job of sort of setting the table, putting our characters in enough peril to warrant, to warrant both us coming back and reading more, but also pulling other characters into the crossover. Because if the thread is not serious enough, or more, not serious enough is the wrong phrase, isn't daunting enough, then you could just have Donna Troy and the Dark Stars or Kyle investigate it on their own. There has to be something. It has to be enough to draw in the entirety of the Titans or other characters, what have you. And I think this has that.
The number of crossovers really picked up in the 90s, and like I said, I like that. I know a lot of people felt overwhelmed, but I think with digital comics today and things like DC Universe, and there are easier ways than with trade paperbacks to go back and fill in the gaps if you may have missed it the first time.
Right. No, but there are some times when, a crossover feels... I mean, look, they're trying to sell comics. They're all, in essence, they're all a cash grab because they all want to make money. However, some crossovers feel justified, and some crossovers you can tell that's the only reason they're doing this is to squeeze extra cash, and to get you to buy multiple. This felt, because of the nature of the villain and the situation, that a crossover that is bigger than one book or one character was necessary. If that makes sense.
This felt like they had a genuine idea here and a genuine direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. Is there anything else about the book that we haven't mentioned?
Not about the book. There's a couple little things I want to mention before we conclude this podcast, but let's
All right.
let's
Let's go ahead and rate it as we usually do before that, and then you can mention those little
Sure.
things before we sign off. So, story, I'm going to give it a solid 4. Like I said, gave you the prerequisite, setting the table of what was going on.
Mhm.
I felt put our characters in enough amount of peril to warrant a bigger crossover, and also made me want to keep reading. But I really liked the thing I liked the most were the interpersonal conversations when characters paired off.
So the character development and the dynamic between
Yeah,
the
right.
pairs of characters. Yeah.
And
Fair
then
point.
the art, I'm gonna give a 5. I really liked it. I didn't see anything that that felt weird to me or bothered me. I thought the visuals in space were great. I loved how most of our characters looked in terms of especially with Kyle and Supergirl, even though it's not Kara, still having that powerful moment.
Yeah.
And again, that last page that you touched on, what a way to grab your attention to make you pick up the next issue. So it's a 5 for me.
I'm gonna go 4 for story, 4.5 for art.
Okay.
Actually, I'll go 4 5/8 just to annoy Adam. Anyway.
You like to give those extra
No, I'll
points.
say 4.5. There wasn't a lot to dislike visually, and again, I really liked this story and where it goes. And I hope that you will come back. You'll like this episode, and you will follow through with the other various Green Lantern casts that are out there, podcasts that are out there, because not only do we enjoy bringing this to you, but we listen to podcasts as well. So
yes, of course.
yeah, these are the kinds of things I listen to and Adam listens to. So hopefully you will join in the enjoyment.
Yes, and then so enjoy the rest of the crossover, and then come back here because we have a lot of stuff planned in terms of we're going to continue our look back, our retrospective reviews of Kyle and his journey. We're also covering the current Green Lantern titles. So we're having a wonderful fill of enjoying this many Green Lantern books on the stands. And as you heard at the top of the show with the news stuff, when there's news regarding the Green Lantern series or Guy's appearance in Superman, we're covering that too. So there's lots to cover, and so come back here and join us. But in the meantime, enjoy the crossover.
Yeah. And last, I'd like to point out for Green Lantern fans, these are some things you can pick up. This is the facsimile edition of Showcase number 22. Of course, the first appearance of Hal Jordan. And this is basically where the Green Lantern Corps mythos starts. Of course, there is All-American number 16, but this is where the Green Lantern Corps, that concept and everything that we know about the Green Lantern Corps, this is where that starts. And there's also a foil variant.
Speaking of foil, I got foreshadowed that.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this. Obviously, if you're just listening, go to the YouTube channel so you can see this.
I'm shocked that you brought both, Donnie. Really, I am.
On that same note, we have Green Lantern Green Arrow number 87, the facsimile edition. And I'm working on a video of these to give these a little closer examination. There's also the foil variant here of that same one. So now I need to get graded versions.
I mean, why not?
And last but not least, I want to point out a print. This is applicable to this show because this is the next issue. This is Green Lantern Volume 3, number 65. And I actually got Ron Mars's autographed here, and it says, "To the best dressed guy in Roanoke," because I was wearing my Green Lantern gear that day, and he liked that. So this is where we're up next. Green Lantern number 65.
Yes. Looking forward to that in that episode. And just to give our viewers and listeners a heads up. Who should they go to next for the next part of the crossover? What's the next show in the rotation?
So next we go to issue number 65 will be covered by the podcast of Oa.
All right, so go there.
It'll be interesting.
Myron and Phil, you're up next.
They're up next. And I'm sure Myron probably won't like this story the best because it's a 90 story featuring Kyle.
Fair enough. But go there and listen to their take on the proceedings. But yeah, this was a blast. Again, we always like to collaborate with our fellow Green Lantern podcasters, and we're always willing to do that. And again, it's a great fandom and space to be a part of.
So if you haven't seen the visuals, here is the list. We are obviously the Emerald Echo. The next is the podcast of Oa, and that's Green Lantern number 65. After that will be Mosaic Comics. That's the third part, Dark Stars 34. After that will be Green Lantern's podcast. That will be the Damage issue, and then the finale will be the Lanterncast, and that will be the next issue of the New Titans.
Wonderful. So
that is GL June. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to be a part of this.
Yes, thanks. Like I said, we love being a part of it. We're happy to collaborate with our fellow Green Lantern podcasters. I think we've had 3 members of those other shows, or members of 3 of those other shows on our show so far, if I remember correctly, if my memory is cooperating.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always a pleasure to interact with them, cross over with them, and be a part of this monthly yearly endeavor, it seems. So it's fun to be a part of that, and we hope you enjoyed the kickoff. And until you hear from us again, you can always keep in touch via social media. So, Donnie, where do they track you down?
You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook as the Emerald Enthusiast, as well as YouTube, where I do lots of Green Lantern collectible reviews.
He does. And if you want to follow me on social media, it's at Adam_LeafsFan. We also have a Facebook group for the podcast network, which I will have linked in the description below. Click that, I'll add you, and we can keep the conversation going there if you so choose. But remember, until next time, Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, is forever. From the first time he's taunting and teasing Donna Troy about interacting with another female, to the last. So long, everybody.
So long, everyone.